Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Part 4 of Before Crippin'. In my last video, I spoke about how when I was in the county jail, the incident on the bus. It's funny how things would change once I got to the penitentiary, because after that incident and the incident with Rebo, I started to understand that Muslims just weren't black. And one incident that happened here was a life lesson for me, because it was probably the greatest threat or danger that I had put myself in since I was in prison, my whole 24 years. And this was the white Muslim named Malik. Malik was a ex bike driver who ended up in the penitentiary. And if I told you that he looked any different than the brainwashing pictures that they show us of a blue-eyed, blonde-haired Jesus, this was him. He had the bluest eyes. I mean, if you look at him, they look like baby powder. And so he was a Christian at the time, and he wasn't having any type of political drama on the yard or anything like that. He just started to really get into his Christianity. So one day, I guess he was listening to some of the discussions we were having inside of the chapel, and he was in another room, and that conversation led him to start secretly studying Islamic material. Now, in prison, races are very particular about their community mixing with others, especially with blacks. Blacks were just like we are in the world. We're the one race that you're just not supposed to mix with. So the Mexicans and the whites, they get together, do what they do. Everyone is allowed to do what they want to do except with the blacks. So Malik secretly started studying Islamic material, to one day he came over to the chapel and he told the Muslims, he said, I believe this here. And he started coming to Juma, which is the Friday service. And on one particular Juma, he got up and he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. And from that point on, he was a Muslim. And every right afforded to a Muslim at that point was his. He had a claim to that, and whether anyone liked it or not, we are told in our faith that a Muslim cannot neglect another. So he decided that he no longer even wanted to be in a cell with someone that wasn't a Muslim. And he told this to the white boys. And the white boys were not having it. So at the time, we had just went on lockdown, and they figured that they were going to make a move on him, because it had gotten, I guess, to the warden, and they wanted to get him off the yard before it started a war. So they were searching the cells for weapons and things like that, and they had us all on the concrete yards with our shower shoes and our boxers on early in the morning. This is at Pelican Bay, 10 miles south of the Oregon border, early January. So as we were coming out, everybody just looking at the ground, trying to maintain a little bit of heat, and I heard a scuffle. A white boy rushed Malik from behind and stole on him. I was about 3 feet away from him. I didn't think about nothing. I just reacted. I grabbed the white boy that fired on him, and I slung him so hard up against the wall in the concrete yard that it dazed him and he fell out. The gunman was a white officer. He had the Mini 14 out the porthole, and they called the whole area down. And he saw everything. But When they came in to get who was involved, the gun tower officer said, it's these two right here, meaning Malik and the other white boy. He intentionally didn't mention that I came to help Malik because if you didn't know by now, officers in the penitentiary support white gangs against other races, even to the point of bringing them weapons, making sure that they control drug markets and so forth. So while I was out on the yard, well, the yard hadn't come up yet. We were still on lockdown. They had took Malik to the hole with the white boy. I went back to my cell. So a lot of the people on the yard were starting to politic behind walls. At that time, they sending kites here and there. And some people who were just pro-black nationalists were like, look, he black, but he got involved with white politics. We can't get involved with that because it's a violation. I was getting these messages, people were letting me know. There was a lot of people who even at a young point in my religious beliefs respected me that much that they were telling me, what to look out for, this, that, or whatever. The Crips had nothing to do with it. They were backing away from it. It was my statement that, look, I'm choosing Islam over Cripping. So the Crips was like, we don't have that. So the Muslims had my back regardless. The surprise was that the only black car that came forward to say, we got you no matter what, was the 415s. And I had worked in the kitchen, and there was a homeboy from a hood right across from me, Front Street Watts, brother named Wolf. He ended up getting killed that year. He got shot by a guard over some other stuff that one day, if you guys want to know something about that, just mention it in the comments section. But Wolf came to me and he told me, he said, cuz, I got a butcher knife. And I'm like, okay. They intentionally rose the yard up, but the white boys, for some reason, didn't pounce on me. And I'm thinking they didn't know what to expect because they don't know if the Crips is going to be involved because the Crips ain't going to give them that information. And up there, you had a lot of, like I said, shot callers. These ain't a lot of youngsters. These was all old cats that had been down from the 70s. There was a lot of BGFs. There was a lot of, you had brothers that respected you on their level, and you had people that respected you for who you were. And because I was young and I didn't know, I had people that was telling me, how not to get trapped. But I see that you digging your own hole like everyone else dug their hole underground. And so they were telling me, look, man, you got to keep your back to the wall. And this is how it happened. I didn't know that while we were on lockdown, because I was not mentioned in the incident, my transfer was still up. From the time that I went to the hole in the melee when I first got to Pelican Bay, my transfer was canceled for a year. I had done a good, clean year to the point that when this incident occurred, I was called for transfer. And so it never happened. At that time, I was transferred down to Lancaster. And Lancaster was where a lot of the brothers from Pelican Bay was landing because they were trying to get close to home in LA where their families could come and see them. And there, LA was almost like being in the projects in Los Angeles. It was very underdeveloped. It actually looked like a project. Most prisons have curves, grass growing and a concrete sidewalk for the inmates to walk on when they come out the building. Well, Lancaster was built on top of a dump. So it basically looked like you were in Angola somewhere back in the South. You had a lot of dirt and no grass. You had no walkways and nothing like that. It was like literally the projects, just missing clotheslines. And so you had a lot of rough stuff that was going on. And then this is where it gets better. At Lancaster, there were a whole different group of Muslims. There were a whole different group of Crips. A lot of people that I knew from the streets, people that I used to run with, did crimes with. A lot of my war stories that they would often want to tell me, because at that point they had already heard that I was a Muslim, and the reason that I was down here from Pelican Bay. So a few of them that I knew I would speak to, but most of them I didn't, because at this point I was holding a grudge against my hood. I felt as if, you had something against me, you should have come to me. Not one time did I have anybody from 97th Street ever walk up to me and say, this is how it is. Everybody that saw me was always happy to see me. So when they would put out the rumors about me, people wouldn't understand, because they would say, man, how is it that we see you guys together when, you see each other? It's like you ain't saw each other in a long time, and you handshake and what's going on, how is it, and everything. But when he's away, you're saying something different. So nobody really was taking any of that stuff serious anymore. It's like Allah had threw dust in the way of everything, and I was able to focus on my case and my religious beliefs. But here at Lancaster, we had a large group of Sunni Muslims, and we had all of the Shia Muslims that were at Pelican Bay being transferred to Lancaster. Many of these Muslims were from old neighborhoods, and I was now witnessing what our belief says hypocrisy can lead to. It's because I saw Muslims who believed as I did, understood as I did, but they still professed to be who they were from their neighborhoods. They would do everything that their homeboys would do. They would go to their meetings. They would do all of these things. And to me, it always reminded me of what the lady said. And I would look at these brothers and I would think, if you only had the warning that I had about what them people are going to do to you. Because in the Quran, Allah tells us that these people are only there to bring you back to what you used to do, and that they won't fail in doing it. If you listen to what I just said, Allah says they will not fail to do that. So the longer you hang around with people that remind you of the good old days, you will attempt to repeat the good old days, like a person seeks to always conjure up the memory of the good old days. So I knew how to say at this point, hey, how's it going? What's up, y'all? And keep moving. I never went to their meetings. I never wanted to know their business. And this saved me from a lot of drama, because whether you know it or not, a lot of the policies regarding CDC officer security in prison have been established because of attacks on guards by the East Coast Crips. And each time that they did that, from Sacramento, they would put out lists of every member of the East Coast Crips in California prison systems, and they would send them down to the prisons and have all of these brothers rounded up and put in the hole for security reasons. And I'll never forget when I went to CMC. I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit on this. I went to CMC, and a brother from 11A killed a guard at Chino. And Sacramento put out a roundup order in the whole state. And my name popped up on it. And I was a secretary for the mental health building at the time. And when the captain on the yard saw it, the security squad was coming to gaffle me. And they was like, hold on, whoa, what's going on? It's like, oh, Mr. Walker is a member of the East Coast Crips. He said, since when? He said he's been a member since he was about 13 years old. He said, no. He said, we never see Mr. Walker on this yard with no East Coast Crips. He said, as a matter of fact, all the people that Mr. Walker is with, this is kind of deep. They used to be from all kind of different gangs. And these people are 40 and 50 years old, and you will never know that they ever gangbang. And he said, that's how Mr. Walker is. I had everybody stand up for me. And I never knew. I mean, some of these people I didn't have these type of conversations with. But it shows you your importance when you start doing the right thing. And from that point on, I knew that there are going to people there are going to be people that are going to stand up for you, and there are going to be people that are against you for what you believe. And that'll be a story for the next part in this series. Assalamu alaikum.